Brandon Staley has officially been fired from the Los Angeles Chargers. And also, what I find interesting is that also the GM, Tom Telesco, has also been fired. And this was the Chargers owner, Dean Spanos, on the firing of both head coach Brandon Staley and GM Tom Telesco. He goes, "These decisions are never easy, nor are they something I take lightly, especially when you consider the number of people they impact. We are clearly not where we expected to be, however, and we need a new vision. Doing nothing in the name of continuity was not a risk I was willing to take. Our fans have stood strong through so many ups and downs and close games. They deserve more. Frankly, they've earned more." Now, the Chargers were extremely, extremely underwhelming so far this season. Losing record, Justin Herbert out for the year, Easton Stick. He actually, if you look at the numbers, it didn't seem that bad. And then you look at the scoreboard, you're like, oh, 63-21, not a pretty sight. I want to know, did the Chargers make the right decision in firing their head coach, Brandon Staley, and not letting him play out the rest of the season?
Yes, I think they did. They should have fired him at the end of last year. It was obvious that he's not really up to it. I don't think he made a lot of bad decisions. I remember the game back against the Raiders, the play-in game, right? He went for it on fourth down when the score was like, 3-0 or something. He went for it on fourth down on the 30-yard line, didn't make it. They wound up losing the game by a field goal. I mean, come on. Those things that's important. You're there to play to win, and every point counts, and all the plays are important. And he just seemed to be asleep at the switch a lot. And he's a defensive coach, and the defense is terrible.
Right.
And the defense has some good players on it. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, right? I mean, those guys are good. And they just came up very small. I mean, there was some games they played okay, I guess, but wow, to give up 63 points, it's like they just weren't ready to play. They just mailed it in. They didn't try. They probably figured the season's over with the Easton Stick at quarterback, and they just mailed it in. So that's on the coach.
And that's what's crazy about it. The players did look like they gave up completely, and well, when your quarterback out, Easton Sticks out there, I don't know how much faith you would have in your team anyway. But if you look at the numbers, 23 of 32, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, a passer rating of 113. Those numbers right there, if you just looked at the box score, that line from Easton Stick, you'd be like, hell of a performance from Easton Stick. And then you go down a little bit, the running game was absolutely abysmal. Austin Eckler, who was complaining all in the offseason about not getting paid in all these running backs, he ran 5 times for 9 yards. That's 1.8 yards an attempt. That ain't going to get you the big check that you were hoping to get. They also had 5 fumbles on the day. 4 of them were lost. And I'll also say this, defensive run game coordinator as well as defensive line coach Jay Rodgers also got fired. What I found really interesting is when you took a look at who the interim head coach would be, it was the outside linebackers coach, and then you realize Kellen Moore, the OC, declined to actually be the interim head coach because he thought it would ruin his chances of becoming an actual head coach next season.
Huh.
So he thinks already, I'm screwed. If Easton Stick's out there, there's no shot in hell people are going to take me seriously because I have a backup. I basically have a backup quarterback as my starting quarterback, and it's not going to look good on my resume.
I think that's a mistake.
I would probably agree too.
I mean, a lot of people would look at it and say he's had some experience as a head coach.
Right.
He was dealt a very bad hand with Easton Stick as his quarterback, and the team was underperforming badly, and that's why they fired the head coach. Maybe he might win 1 or 2 games. I think that would be good for his resume. I think he had the wrong. I think it paints him as somebody not willing to take a risk. Somebody who's not willing to step up to a challenge.
Maybe.
Yeah, so it may hurt him, I think.
That it could very well hurt him. But a lot of people are saying, is this, a very interesting job, right? Is this the best job out there for future head coaches? I think we're assuming Ron Rivera will be fired. Matt Eberflus, head coach of the Chicago Bears, he may be fired. There's a couple jobs out there. We're going to talk about a little bit later. Bill Belichick, the Patriots job could be up for grabs here. I don't know if this Chargers job is really something a lot of people will be looking at because of the fact that they have the second worst cap situation heading into next year. Somehow New Orleans, the Saints, keep being in cap hell, each and every year. So they actually have the worst cap situation. But the Chargers, you're paying a lot of players a lot of money that may not even be there. Khalil Mack, $38.5 million next year. Joey Bosa, a little over $36.5 million. Keenan Allen, $35 million. Mike Williams, who's injured for the rest of the year, $32 million. J.C. Jackson, who's not even on your team, near $21 million. Derwin James, he's not worth $20 million a year, but they're paying him $20 million a year. And then finally, Justin Herbert, who's at 19. He's the only one that I would say, yeah, you know what, that's fair. They're in a horrible cap situation. However, I want to know, Brandon Staley was terrible, right?
Obviously.
And the Spanos family was hoping to get that defensive prowess because he just came from the Rams, who had a top defense that prior year, back in 2020. And they fired Anthony Lynn, most likely because of his conservative nature. That he didn't go for it on fourth down a lot. And they brought Brandon Staley in to be that guy who takes risks, who goes the extra mile to try to succeed. And to be fair, that didn't really work because he would go for it fourth down on his own 35-yard line. It's very, very risky to do that. Yeah. So Brandon Staley did not do a good job on his own side of the football, and that's where you realize, good and bad coaches, can they get their side of the ball right? Brandon Staley had averaged the 24th best defense in the league with his tenure with the Chargers. They averaged 26th in points allowed. They were giving up a bunch of points, and they were letting defenses run all over them. What's shocking is that they're very, very cheap. The owners of the Chargers are very, very cheap. Brian Dable and Sean Payton were both interested in this job. And they decided to go with Brandon Staley, the cheaper option, the less experienced option. So when we're taking a look at the future head coaches,
you get what you pay for.
Exactly. And especially, in this realm of football where things are now more offensive sided, I want to know, who do you think that the next Chargers head coach should be?
Well, I think that Bill Belichick is fired. I think that they'll really try hard to get him. Because they do have some good players on defense. The defensive scheme is the problem. And Belichick has shown that with players nobody ever heard of, he could come up with a defense that would be tough to beat. His problem has been on offense now that he lost Tom Brady, who could make any, like Belichick on defense, Brady could make almost any offense good. Maybe not so great with the Buccaneers in the last year, but still they made the playoffs, right? And he had over 5,000 yards passing. So, they have a quarterback. Justin Herbert is a good quarterback, right? So that's something that he wouldn't have to worry about. And offense has proven to be not his forte. If they could have a great defense, bring in Josh McDaniel to be his offensive coordinator, right? Reunite those guys. I think that's a high possibility if Belichick gets fired. Well, but I think he'll have. I'd say this: we're going to talk about him in a minute, but I think he have a bunch of options. I do think he'll. Oh yeah, okay. He'll have a bunch of options.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know if the one problem, and I completely agree with you. It'd be exactly like the Tom to Tampa type of a move, where all he needs to go is just move there. He's the remaining piece on that team. Good defense. You have the quarterback solidified, which you didn't have in New England right now. There is no quarterback in New England, whether it's Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, or used to be Malik Cunningham. You got no quarterback. You have Justin Herbert, who we've seen is a capable A-B+ quarterback. But he's also worth.
He's signed for a long term, too.
Which is just one more year, supposedly. It came out, Ian Rappaport says, a lucrative multi-year extension. It was 1 year. He's just there for next year.
Well, he can stay long. It would be his option, right? I thought he has
it's just a 1 year extension. That's it.
That's it?
They would need to redo it again. But when it comes to him going to the Chargers, I just mentioned it, they're very, very cheap. You're not going to spend $25 million getting Bill Belichick, which is what the Patriots are reportedly paying him. So you got to look at someone who is willing to take less because they're maybe a first-time head coach. And so what I'm thinking about that is I'm thinking probably Ben Johnson, OC of the Lions. There's a couple people. You could get Eric Bieniemy from the Commanders. I don't know. You're going to have to look around, try to find even Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. He may be available for you to pick up.
I don't think he's coming out of college.
Michigan's trying to keep him there, and rightfully so.
He's got the number one team in college football.
Right, and they're playing for the national championship right here. So when I'm taking a look at the Chargers situation, I don't think the Chargers have many options. I do think the job, on face value, it's fine. Oh my, look at all this talent. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Will. You got a lot of pieces there, but you got to figure out some cap situation. You got to get rid of players you might not want to get rid of at face value. You got to move some pieces because this team is very, very expensive and it's underwhelming. It's going to be incredible. It was underwhelming this season, underwhelming last season. And by the way, I'll say this. Brandon Staley, just as a head coach, they were up 27-0 in a wild card game against the Jaguars. They lost that game at literally the Jaguars stomped all over them in halftime. In 2 quarters, one singular half, they erased a 27-0 deficit. I mean, this team was bad.
Yeah.
J.C. Jackson coming off of an incredible season with New England, comes over to the Chargers. They pay him a bunch of money. He's terrible.
They're still paying him.
They're still paying him.
Yeah. And
then including next year, they're going to pay him too. The number, I just brought it up here. The number is for J.C. Jackson, $20.8 million. That's the cap hit for the Chargers next season on J.C. Jackson, who currently is on the Patriots.
Yeah.
So they're paying him money that maybe,
Yeah, so that's a good reason why the GM was fired, too.
Well,
right?
and here's the interesting about that, right? Because we talked about it. In New England, if the Patriots are willing to keep Belichick, they're going to need to find a GM. And that's I think, one of the ways that the Patriots could keep Bill Belichick is saying, we're going to get you a GM. Belichick might not want to give up that power. And with the Chargers, he doesn't need to because he could be the GM because they fired both.
That may be why they fired both. They're thinking they could lure him and let him
a hell of a lure if you could do that.
Pick another N'Keal Harry to be a wide receiver for them. I mean, they have number 1 wide receivers. They got like 2 or 3 of them.
Well, I don't know what number 1, but they should.
Keenan Allen is a number 1.
Keenan Allen's number. Mike Williams is a deep threat, but he's injured. I wouldn't call him a number 1. And then you also have Quentin Johnston, who was supposed to be a good receiver, but he's incredibly underwhelming this season.
Yeah.
So maybe, I mean, the one thing that defense needs is proper coaching, and I think Belichick gives you probably. I still believe, I've ripped on him countless times. I still think he's a phenomenal defensive coach. But that's just me. That is just me.
Yeah, well, that's many people who feel that way. He's proven that every year.
As they should.
Yeah.
So when I take a look at this, I'm not entirely sure how many coaches are willing to get that job, but I do know that the move to also fire the GM is very, very interesting. And that's where I think Belichick could be intrigued in this job, because if they just fired Staley and kept Tom Telesco, I wouldn't be inclined to say Belichick. But if they're willing to pay Belichick that salary, I think that's a beautiful job. It'd be walking into a Tom Brady situation.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, if you want to check out the full episode, make sure you click the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to listen to this show anywhere you go, make sure you go to anchor.fm/The Harvey Hour or anywhere you get your podcasts.